Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome back to Houselights, our director discussion show here on the Nerd Party Network. We're into our second Oliver Stone biopic with 1991's JFK. I'm Darren ABC Moser, and I'm joined again by my friends John DEF Mills and Tristan GHI Riddell. Buckle up for the next 3 hours, guys, as we discuss this movie. As the best joke I could come up with, because I didn't literally want to cast one of you as Lee Harvey Oswald. I couldn't do it.
I am not resisting arrest. I am not resisting arrest.
And it would have been you, Tristan, because you have 2 syllables in your last name. I'm sorry. That's just the way it would have gone.
I get it. I get it. I mean, I too like to shout, I'm not resisting arrest after I punch a cop.
Fun story. Fun story. My friend Joey and I, everybody hears about Joey every so often. We've made a pact with each other that if either one of us ever gets framed for something and we're arrested, the other person has to come out of the crowd the way that Jack Ruby does in this movie and just go, Oswald, and then shoot the other person. So
interesting.
That's a very specific
friendship. Yeah. Very, okay.
It's a pact. It's a pact between friends.
Well, this movie is going to be an interesting discussion because for Tristan and I, this is our first time viewing it. But John, you caught this in theaters or later?
In theaters, man.
I was going to say.
Of course, I saw The Doors in theaters. Why wouldn't I see this in theaters? I saw this with my brother.
Good point.
Saw this with my brother in our hometown, the local movie theater. And it was an experience, man. It was awesome. I still remember sitting there. I remember the row we were in and everything like that. At the end of the movie, like, whoa. I mean, it's hard to really express how much mud was slung at Oliver Stone for this movie after it came out, and how nuts it was to think that there was a conspiracy about JFK, and to think that the war, blah blah, like all of the stuff came out, and now like people look at it, was 30 something years later, and it's like, oh, that sounds about right. Like it's so wild just to see time dilate like that. Right. But yes, I saw this in the theater.
Yeah, and that's because that's the thing is it's like I looked it up because I was curious on the timing. So 1991 would only have been 28 years after 63. So that's not a long time. Like we're getting that close to like our distance from 9/11, for as far as a large, impactful American event. So yeah, it's just so interesting because I almost feel like we could look at this movie in 1991 and we can look at this movie in 2024 and we're going to have a different kind of take because it's just how much time has passed, the way, government is viewed, all of those things together. So, okay. So you remember the row and the seat, John?
Oh, I do.
Was this, so I'm going to look to you for what was the beat on the street at this moment? Was this kind of like a thing where like the JFK conspiracy was like peaking on the, I would say message boards, but those didn't really exist.
They did not exist at all back then. No.
But was this, the urban legend kind of like swirled or like what, like why was this movie made? You may not know this answer. I'm just saying but why in 91 were they like, let's make a movie about the assassination of JFK?
Well, it always
like what fueled that?
Well, it had always been something that people, some people would be like, yeah, right. That was, they would have some conspiracy about it and you'd hear sort of things, but of course it's tough because it blends over time for me. Right. Conspiracies were not really embraced about the JFK assassination, but it was sort of like, yeah, there was something more to it than that sort of thing. And then it was my recollection, at least in my corner of the world, was then that Oliver Stone basically kicks the door in with this movie. And all of a sudden, everybody is absolutely enamored of the idea that there is a conspiracy, and it absolutely became just a part of the zeitgeist for everybody.
It's kind of the gasoline on the fire, as it were.
Well, I mean, it becomes so much just a part of the culture that Seinfeld has an episode mocking the trial where Kramer and Newman claim that they've been spit on by a player. And then Jerry recreates it just like the courtroom scene. He goes, so the loogie would have had to go up in the air and come around and hit Newman on the back of the neck.
That's when you know you've made it.
Exactly. And the funniest thing being, Wayne Knight was in that scene in Seinfeld, and he's in this movie. And it was like, it was so beautifully done. But yeah, I would really, for my personal experience, this is the movie that really sort of brought the whole conspiracy idea to the forefront, at least in my corner of the world.
Well, and that's the way the conspiracy is presented, because it's like they're almost not proving it. They're proving how ridiculous the non-conspiracy official fact is. It's like the reverse of it. And you start to go like, yeah, like when he starts to say, and then Lee Harvey, ran in 90 seconds, like down, here. And again, these are all pieces and it is a biopic. So we're going to take all of this with a grain of salt. But let's go to our man on the street who was standing on the grassy knoll. Tristan, this was your first time watching this. And I think you watched it with Mrs. Riddell. What were you expecting for this? Like, I mean, all that's on the poster is JFK and some flags. There's not, did you think, courtroom drama or, really long buildup? What were you expecting?
I honestly didn't know what I was expecting when I started the movie. I had no idea. I was kind of a blank slate. I was a little apprehensive to watch it after The Doors, because I'm like, if you got so much wrong in The Doors, is this even going to be enjoyable in JFK? And, spoiler alert, he doesn't solve it. And so I'm like, oh man, is this going to be like The Medicine Man? Do you guys remember when we reviewed The Medicine Man? And like Sean Connery,
he gets like a hair's breadth from curing cancer, and then like the forest burns down, and you're like, okay, I guess we're done.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is that but then they continue on to keep finding it. And we are, as we're watching it build up, we're like, well, we know they're not going to cure cancer, so why are we watching this? And so part of me was just like, what's that going to be like? Like we know they're not going to solve it, so what am I going to get out of this? So I was really apprehensive, and at the same time, I was like, well, Zodiac works, so maybe JFK will work too. And so actually, I sat down to watch this with my wife, and my wife had seen this before, and she liked it. And so she was interested in showing it to me, and we got like 20 minutes in, and something happened where we had to stop it and move on. And I was like, oh man, we're not going to be able to finish this tonight or even continue watching this tonight. And she's like, well, we're 20 minutes in. It's just 3 more hours of this. I'm like, what are you talking about? Oh, what you saw. It's just 3 more hours of that.
And that was not a lie. Yeah, I know often, or sometimes when we're having a chat, we'll kind of start with a rough rating in our hearts, and it might move up or down. This one's going to be an uphill climb for me, because I swear 2/3 of this movie, it took that long for it to really hook me. Not before the courtroom drama, like a little bit before then, but I was just bombarded with, there's so much information, there's so many characters, there's so many names, there's so many events and things, and it's just thrown at you. Like later it kind of gets sorted, but for the first half, it's like a shotgun blast. And I was just so overwhelmed, where I was like, I kind of was just glazing over, because I'm like, they're just throwing so much at me. I don't know if I'm supposed to be piecing it together right now. It's not like a murder mystery where all the details are going to be revealed and then you'll have the aha, denouement at the end. It's like, no, it's not going to be like that. So it was a lot. And also 91 is long enough ago that a lot of these actors, which everybody at 91 was in this movie, my goodness, are so many stars, but they're
I want to talk about that
they start to blend. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, like when you watch an old enough movie that certain actors, like Tommy Lee Jones, I did not recognize for a good couple of minutes, because he melded into that role, which I admire him for, because every other role I've ever seen him in, it's blatantly Tommy Lee Jones that I see. But how is that for you, Tristan? As you're like, oh my gosh, it's you. Oh my gosh, it's you. And then Sutherland shows up, and then Wayne Knight's over there. And it's like, what's going on?
Well, I actually, before I watched it, I actually took a screenshot of the cast and texted it to John saying, holy crap. And so here's just the top row, folks. Okay, this isn't everybody. This is just the top row here. Kevin Costner, Tommy Lee Jones, Gary Oldman, Kevin Bacon, Michael Rooker, Jack Lemmon, Laurie Metcalf, Sissy Spacek, Joe Pesci, John Candy, Pruitt Taylor Vince, J.O. Sanders, Walter Matthau, Sally Kirkland, and Donald Sutherland. Again, just top row here. There's way more people in it.
Yes. Yes, there are. There are a lot of people in this movie, a whole lot of people in this movie. Vincent D'Onofrio in a very small role.
Very small role. Always loved D'Onofrio.
Absolutely. Can't go wrong with D'Onofrio. But it's interesting to me. I think this is going to be an interesting ride from my perspective, specifically because the way, Tristan, that you talk about encountering Seven is sort of how JFK was for me, because there are so many places where it cuts and it jumps and like it like flips around and you get inside a character's head while they're talking, and then you're outside, and then there's this amazing ability, I think, to tell the story while jumping around multiple timelines at the same time. But I got to put this out there. What really struck me this time, because we're specifically watching this in terms of biopics, is and
the director's cut. I will say we did watch the
director's cut. But what's fascinating to me about this is that this is two massive biopics, The Doors and JFK. The Doors is not about the Doors. It's about Jim Morrison. And JFK is about Jim Garrison, but really the conspiracy around, that he's like trying to uncover and everything like that. So, I mean, my question for you two, since this is, I've lost perspective in a lot of ways on this film, but my question to you two is like, did you feel that there was a thread, that there was a definitive biopic action going on here, or did it feel more like a pseudo documentary with a lot of stuff around it?
Well, Tristan, can you take that one first? Because you said you started to try to research just what was real as far as like historical events or courtrooms or anything like that, just because, after watching The Doors and it being so off the mark, I think that's a healthy dose of skepticism.
Yeah, in terms of realism, it's completely debatable. I think that's the thing, is that it's really vague in its criticisms. Like, let me put it this way: in The Doors, you're able to say, "Oh, the TV throw didn't happen. Thanksgiving fight didn't happen." With this one,
you have an eyewitness that can counter it.
Yeah, you have an eyewitness who said like, "Oh yeah, I saw this," or like Joe Pesci's character, like where the like Ferry, where it says like, "Oh well, Stone says that he had a close connection with Lee Harvey Oswald and did X, Y, and Z." But then the criticism is they might have crossed paths, but there's no evidence to say that they had a strong connection. Like, that's the thing, is that there's really no super strong evidence against it, but at the same time, there's no super strong evidence for it. So Oliver Stone proponents are like, they have stuff to back it up, but at the same time, how weak or how strong is that connection that he's making? And opponents are the same thing, where they're just like, well, he might be taking this too far, or this is kind of a jump, or the magic bullet possibly could happen. It's all really, really nebulous. So it's not black and white like in The Doors. In The Doors, this black and white, like that didn't happen. This didn't happen. That doll didn't exist at this time. You look at JFK, like you can say like, oh, well, that speech at the end of the courtroom, that didn't happen, but it's all things that Garrison said, and
Right.
did at one
Over
point,
history.
or it was in a book that he wrote. So it was all Garrison's words, but it's a movie and they compacted it into a speech.
Right.
So I think Stone really walked the line here with
That's
being
not
able
Johnny
to.
Cash. It's JFK.
It's JFK. He's able to be credible, and like even if he's stretching it to the point of breaking, he's not breaking, but he's stretching it like Stretch Armstrong.
So you would say it's kind of constructed around, this is my biopic, like you said, on Jim Garrison and things that he said. Almost like we were talking about how the courtroom was not proving this. It was saying the official account is so preposterous. It's like, we're not trying to prove what happened to JFK. We're saying this is what Jim Garrison said happened to JFK, kind of like a once removed kind of a picture.
Right.
Like I kind of feel like he would have, like, I haven't read the book that it's based off of, but it almost feels like you kind of started with that courtroom and it's like, okay, we need to land here. How do we build everything to land in that courtroom scene? And I'll be honest, like, I could have almost done without the first half. Like, I know I kind of mentioned that before, but like, if they had just kind of started with, not in 63, but because there's a big time jump. I mean, it's a couple of years at least, when they actually start the investigation, like start there and, show a little bit in flashback. But I didn't feel a benefit of seeing things that actually happened in 63 later on. Like that's just me personally, but what,
Yeah,
you kind of picking up what I'm saying, John?
I am, and I don't dismiss it. I get what you're saying. I think it's important because Stone is setting the stage. He's world building in that time,
Which
and
is, I definitely see that. Yeah.
yeah, and that's why I think it's important, because it shows what I give Stone credit for, especially here in the director's cut, but also in the theatrical cut, is he presents the idea that not everybody loved Kennedy, that this was a tragedy, but there were people who were like, good riddance. And like, if anything, I think that goes a long way, regardless of historical accuracy, of giving the film a sense of credibility, because it feels like the real world. He's setting something up where he's building the world for you to be in, to say, look, this is a world where you have people that really hated this guy. They're not even involved in any conspiracy I'm going to show you, but there were people that had that type of hatred. And I think that pays off by showing the people that were involved in the conspiracy. You're like, oh, well, yeah, there were other people that didn't have positions of power like this that probably would have done something like this if they had the opportunity. And I think that sort of thing is important for the film to set up its own world. It's adjacent to reality world, so that you buy into it for the duration of the picture. That's my counter to that.
That is true, because like it did feel very real. Like this is an era before, the internet and social media and all the package that comes with that, and you still had people acting like people, acting in selfish ways, acting in scared ways, acting in best interest, and pulling strings and big pictures, and like, so it felt very human through the whole get-go, even though it's decades before. But yeah, so Tristan, when you were watching the next 20 minute by 20 minute by 20 minute chunk that was repeating the first 20 minutes, when did it kind of hook you with its story? Was it not till much later in the courtroom case, or like when his family, like you start to get the subplot of the family kind of like falling apart because he's so committed, like fanatically, to the case?
Donald Sutherland.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. He kind of sums it up, like, and just starts to spell it out in a very practical way.
There's a lot of exposition in this movie. This is basically exposition, the movie. Like that's what this is.
It kind of is.
And I mean, but that's a concept that you're buying into. Like this is, like, Stone does a really great job of, they say show, don't tell, but Stone shows while he tells in this. Mm-hmm. And this movie had 2,800 shots, and they filmed it in only 72 days, which is insane for a movie this massive. And I know I'm getting off track here. I'll get back on track. But as I was watching it, I was like, holy crap! Like the amount of setups that this took. Like I think when we were at Pruitt Taylor Vince's part when he's at the train yards, and this is pretty early on when he's talking about all the guys who are on the other side of the grassy knoll. Just that sequence alone had something like 12 setups, 12 different shots. I'm not talking about cuts. I'm talking about shots.
Right.
And
there's
that's
so
a
much
monumental
in this movie.
It's just so, exactly. There's just so much coverage, just moving the camera, getting different angles. And just for a movie that's this long, it's just, I can't even imagine the nightmare and logistical, I guess monument to logistics that this movie was incredibly impressive. And I want to talk about the editing later on, but Donald Sutherland's piece was another one of those pieces that had just so many shots, and not shots that were reused, shots that just we hadn't seen before.
Yeah,
all new stuff, and like cut back and forth with different kinds of film stock and black and white and color. Some was in 16 millimeter, some was in 35 millimeter, some was even 8 millimeter, I think. And it was just
2 millimeter. It was,
and cutting it in and also again sidetracked. Like he cut it all together on 3/4 of an inch tape in order to have the ability to have frenetic editing, which I think really lent itself to the piece. But Sutherland's almost soliloquy was 16, 17 minutes long.
And spellbinding. I'll go ahead and say it.
Oh,
yeah, thank you. It's absolutely
just watching. Like if I had something to rewatch, I would just watch that part again.
Absolutely,
like that is so good.
That's the peak of the movie. Like that's the best that the movie is. I'm not saying that it's downhill from there. Well, I guess I kind of am saying that, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like it's the best part of the movie.
First climax of the movie. It kind of is.
I don't know. I wouldn't go so far as saying climax, but
or starting the third act. Maybe
it's so compelling. And Sutherland makes it look so easy. He's an effortless actor. And I think Stone originally wanted to get Brando to be in that spot.
Oof.
So and that would have been
written
very
it all
different.
On a diaper and read it back because
I mean that's the thing.
I can't see it.
You can't hire Brando to do a monologue that you actually want to be accurate. You just ask Coppola.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been crazy. I love Brando. I love his performances, but he would have been absolutely wrong for this role. Sutherland did it with ease. He did it with a smile, but it was also compelling. And I think in that movie, like when Sutherland was able to sum it up, and he was kind of that deep throat character, not just kind of, he was that deep throat character. It made you realize, oh, okay. If even like a quarter of this is true, you're like, maybe Stone has something here and I need to pay attention.
Well, yeah, it's the first time that Garrison gets kind of acknowledgement, like vindication. It's like the first time that someone's like, no, you're right. Like I think when he says you're closer than you think you are, that like sent chills. And then he just like, boom, this is what I think happened. And after that, that's when he's kind of, when Garrison is like, oh my gosh, it's too big. Like it almost takes the fight out of him because he realizes how, in the story, how big it is. What do you think, John?
No, I think I will actually side with you, Darren, when you referred to Sutherland's speech as the climax, because I think there's before then where Garrison's sort of probing in the dark, trying to figure it out. Things don't seem right. And then you have this scene where Sutherland ties it up and says, you're closer than you think. He's saying it to the audience as much as he is to Garrison. And then the back half of it is that's the jolt that the hero needs to get him across that final mile, right? And get to that trial. And because
he's starting to get pressure. He's starting to get he's starting to have to pay for his, dedication.
it all revolves around that. That's why it's so key. The performance that Sutherland gives is everything hinges on whether that scene sells you, that Garrison wasn't wasting your time before this, and that he's not going to waste your time after it, because you can pivot on this one moment here. And I remember Sutherland's scene being one of the ones that my brother and my friends and I all talked about at the time. We all talked about Sutherland specifically because it is that great a scene, which is not to take anything away from some of the other fantastic performances. Like Gary Oldman's is amazing in this. He's 1 year off from playing Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, so this is just on his upward swing. And I think that, that
for those of you who don't know, John believes that is pièce résistance.
Yes. But the thing is, I think that, since we look at the work of directors and everything like that, I think you look at The Doors and then you look at this and you see a director who not only has a clear vision, he's definitely telling a story here.
Oh, definitely.
But you look at the performances that Stone gets. This is somebody who knows how to work with an actor and get the performance that he wants, notwithstanding how good Kevin Costner can do a Southern accent. But like the rest of it, like you believe, you lose the actors, no matter how well you know them, you lose the actors. Stone is so gifted in getting an actor to just give that performance where you lose them, where you forget you're watching Sissy Spacek. You forget that you're watching Gary Oldman. You forget all of these sorts of things. Now, Sissy Spacek has an incredibly thankless performance, thankless role in this film, where I think that Stone also, as a director, doesn't always know what to do with a female character effectively. And I think that's one of the shortcomings that comes through in both The Doors and in JFK.
The Nolan syndrome.
Sure, if you want to call it that.
I had a hard... This is my own failing. This is not Stone's. This is not Spacek's. This is my own failing. Whenever I see Sissy Spacek, seeing her as a middle-aged person with 5 kids is hard for me, because it's either Carrie or an older woman. Like there's no in between for Spacek for me, and I don't know why. It was just I was so like, Sissy Spacek is the only one who didn't convince me that she was someone else. And again, I said that's my own failing.
The most difficult thing, I think, is that Stone, like the one scene where like I would come back and just like kind of harp on it, is where they get in their fight. It doesn't play like any real fight ever has between a man and wife. Never in history. And he even like walks out with his kids. It's like, yep, I hate getting in fights too, kids. So let me tell you something about fights. It's like, no, everybody's pissed. You're slamming. You're like, you storm off and it's like, Daddy, why are you fighting? Jeff, we just are. Just let Daddy calm down. I'm not trying to like open the, like, I'm not saying that there's like strife in the household or anything like that. But like when you get in an argument, right, your blood's up. You're not suddenly like taking a leisurely stroll out to the swing.
Way
on the
better
porch.
Arguments in cinema beside that.
Yeah,
this was not.
It just doesn't land.
And to piggyback off of that, I think that was probably the weakest thing in the movie, was there was no chemistry between Kevin Costner and Sissy Spacek. There was just none. Like, I do not see them as a believable married couple whatsoever. And if Liz Garrison had a lesser role, then I'd say that didn't really matter. Anybody could play that role. But because she has a substantial role. I feel like I think Spacek was a little miscast.
I think that I'll lay it more at the script, at the director's feet, what have you, because I think that it really is, for all of the great performances that Stone gets out of people. I think we might even see this going forward. I think it really is just he has a difficulty getting knowing how to get that chemistry going between the actors. I mean, it could also just be that they cast Sissy Spacek because it's Sissy Spacek, and Costner was on his upswing. And so you cast Costner, and they cast without thought of chemistry. And then you start shooting, and it's like,
I don't feel like chemistry
okay.
was a factor in the equation. But like you said, John, I mean, disappearing into the role is like the subtitle of this movie. I mean, I kind of relate it to how long it takes me to kind of realize an actor is an actor, is who I am. And sometimes that's like makeup and costume and stuff. But a lot of times it's the performance. Like I said before, Tommy Lee Jones, his voice is so recognizable that I was blown away how long it took me to like confirm to myself that that's who that was. John Candy, even, who is very recognizable, like melted into that tiny role. Maybe it's the sunglasses, but also Joe Pesci, which, I mean, he had the terrible wig and eyebrows on purpose, but that was also another role where I just was like, I'm pretty sure that's Joe Pesci. Let me look it up. If you have to look it up to be sure, then they're disappearing into it. And that was all over this movie. Very well cast, very well acted, I guess.
Yeah. I think that, with the fact that they shot, to your point, Tristan, as many setups as they did, with as complex a film as this is, with all of these different moving pieces, to get performances like this, I think is no small feat. I think it really is something that should be applauded for getting that across the line. I think that, if anything, just to double back again to the Costner Spacek thing, is it's just not, Stone's not interested in telling that story necessarily. So there's almost a feeling of like, he put it in here because he felt
his wife being there is almost an inconvenience to the plot.
Right. But he needs to show it to show that he's a family man and a good man, and there for his
because that's the only thing he wins. Stuff. He wins his family back. That's the only victory he has in the end.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where I just, I guess the ultimate question is does the rest of the movie make up for this shortcoming, at its core, essentially, which is the relationship between husband and wife? Does it make up for it? Is it interesting enough that you move past it and forgive it?
Well, I'll leave that for final thoughts. I wanted to circle back to editing because we started talking about that again. And I wanted to start with you, John, just because I'm assuming you've seen both the theatrical and the extended edition.
Yes, I have.
So I don't know how far between those two viewings were, but could you give me a glimpse of like what was extended? Was it just more of the same? Is there like a huge plot in the middle?
No, I think that there's enough distance that I think that this is one of those director's cuts where the director like rearranged a couple of things and inserted a couple of other things. I think there's actually there are some shots that seem to jump out in a sense because they look a little too clean compared to the rest of the film in a way. But in terms of like distinct differences, I couldn't sit there and like, I couldn't Zapruder film this thing and be like, now that right there, that's what's different about that.
Because he added about 17 minutes. So not, it's a chunk of time.
It's a good chunk, but I think that part of it also is that he did a couple of rearrangements as well. Okay.
So it was literally a director's edition, not like, oh, I always wanted that subplot and now I can put it back in. It's like, it's a reworking of the movie at that point.
I don't think in any really larger way, but like there's a part of me that while I was watching this, maybe it's just too much time. Maybe I need to go back and watch the theatrical, but there were definitely parts where I was like, this feels a little different, but maybe it was just the added length. I don't know.
What about you, Tristan? Obviously have not seen the theatrical, but you were starting to lean into the edit, I mean, besides the whole film stock change and black and white, but I think you kind of encapsulated it when you said a lot of this movie is someone telling you something and you're also seeing it. It's like show and tell at the same time, which I think is such a clear way of saying it. 'Cause, it's like even Donald Sutherland's parts, that could have been 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. But it's like, it's a good chunk of time. But it's like show and tell at the same time, which I think is such a clear way of saying it. 'Cause, it's like even Donald Sutherland's parts, that could have been 1 lock the camera down. They're sitting on a bench on the mall for half of that. But instead, we get almost every single thing he's saying is shown in like third person or first person or whatever we're given. But how did that all come together in your viewing with the editing?
Before I go into that, one thing, because you mentioned the Donald Sutherland scene again, I want to mention that, like, from an editing perspective, one thing that I thought was really beneficial was that that scene was originally in two parts. Like, he was supposed to meet with X in Washington, D.C. 2 different times. One, the time when we saw it, and then they would have a follow-up conversation after he lost the case, and that would have been the last thing you saw in the movie.
Ooh.
And I think that would have been the wrong move. And it was the wrong move, because I think it was great to put it together as they did. And they found that in post-production. And also on top of that, that's one thing, like, that's something that he doorsified, where that conversation never took place, but it's
you need
all
it
the
for the story.
But you needed it for the story, and all the information that X gave Garrison came to his own conclusion about, and X, who's based off of a real person, said all of those things either in his book and or to Stone himself. So again, it didn't really happen, but it's all backed up by stuff that people said. Is it real? Is it not? We don't know, but it's backed up by sources. And but in terms of editing, this movie was 10 years ahead of its time in terms of editing. This editing style, if you told me this was, if I was, separated by time, and you told me this was a 1991 film just based on the editing, I would say, no, you're wrong. This is an early 2000 film. This kind of style, this kind of commercial editing of this frenetic pacing, the quick cuts, the moving around. Like, yes, I'm not saying Stone and his editors, like Joe Hushing and Pietro Scalia, invented this style. This kind of style has existed since at least the 60s. I'm not saying that they invented it, but putting it together in this kind of narrative structure and in this kind of format, especially in something as dense as this, as even though, like, we use the term biopic, we're using it loosely. With this amount of information, this kind of subject material, it was very rare to see this kind of style of editing applied to this. And I think, in my opinion, this is what makes this movie a little bit better than. Let me rephrase that. Like, this had an opportunity to be extremely dry. This was, if you read this on paper, it's an incredibly dry script. But Stone brings it to life with his performances, and the actors bring it to life with what they bring to the table. And then John Williams brings it to life with his score. And then the editors make sure that the heartbeat is stable with their frenetic editing style. And if it was a straightforward biopic, or if it, not biopic, but if it was just a straightforward, normal 1991, early 90s, late 80s editing for a political drama, this you would have fallen asleep at the hour and 45-minute mark. You needed something like this to keep your brain active so that you paid attention. And this was a genius move by Stone. The editing is the best thing about the movie. And as someone who has edited narrative structure, documentary structure, commercial structure, I see all of those things utilized in this 3-hour and something piece. And from a macro perspective, I think, yeah, it definitely could have been trimmed down. I feel like some of that key exposition that Sutherland gives, and that Bacon gives, and Candy gives, feels like could have been tightened. Like, those could have been your anchor points, and in between could have been tightened. Oh, speaking of Bacon, I listened to a podcast for years where the opening theme had a bunch of movie quotes put together. And one of them was, "You're not a bad looking man, Mr. Garrison." And I had no idea what that was from for years and years. And then when I watched this movie, I almost spat out my drink when Bacon said that. But
Now you
regardless, now I know, but regardless, like I cannot give enough praise to the editing coming from a person who has edited for 20 years.
Well, the Academy agreed with you too, because they won
Good.
best editing. So
I was
think,
really scared because I knew you had the answer to that.
of course,
And I was really scared which direction you were going to go.
It also won best cinematography. So go figure. The great Robert Richardson, good Lord. But I think that what you touch on there is something that I think a lot of people sleep on with this movie, which is the score. This is not your typical, like when you think of John Williams, you know what you think. I say John Williams, everybody knows what just popped in their head. Everybody knows whichever one it was. It's okay.
It's not
okay.
JFK, but
happens to all of us. But this is one of those scores. In a couple of years, he's going to do Schindler's List. This is one of those scores where you're
same
reminded.
Year he does Hook.
Yeah.
Or after. It's the one he does after Hook. Yeah.
Right. But this is one of those scores that, like Schindler's List, like Munich, like any of these other smaller, like more intimate types of scores, where you're reminded of the fact that the John Williams who's done all the big bombast for the blockbusters, that's just a part of his talent. And like this score, I think is so, I think it's captivating, honestly. I think that this is another one of those Williams scores where like he showed up and he's like, okay, I gotta tie it all together and give it that emotional vibe that he's looking for here. And he watches the film, he watches how it's coming together, and he goes, okay, I know how to tie all of this together so everybody's watching it. And I love this score.
It's a very interesting process. I was reading that, you know, he, like I was saying, he was still working on Hook, and so didn't have as much time to commit to JFK. And so kind of, I think, saw like the first half of the movie and then basically developed 6 kind of motifs and, you know, put those, and you heard it. Like, I think the one that stuck out the most to me was kind of the, you know, do, like the, like tense things are happening, because he uses a very, very, very similar motif in Jurassic Park. Whenever like kind of mysterious things are happening and they're sneaking around, it's very, very similar, which is also John Williams. But this is a motif movie, not so much by person like his other works, but by kind of mood or moment that it's, you know, it ties it together in the auditory way.
Yeah, I think there are so many technical pieces of this movie, Tristan. I like the way you said it, where it's like that in terms of editing, it's ahead of its time. I think that there is the sense that, like you said, there's a director who knows that if you don't put this together in a specific way, people will fall asleep in the first 15 minutes or walk out. They're just going to be bored out of their skulls. And there may still be people like that, Darren. But I can tell you that when I sat down to watch this, I was like, look, okay, this is 17 minutes longer. Okay, I'm going to go in. And before I knew it, 45 minutes had passed. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll stick it out for a little bit longer here. I will completely cop to it. Since the first time I saw it, this movie grabs me from the beginning and I'm off to the races with it. And I'm like, yeah, tell me more. Come on. Keep giving it to me here. The one thing that I would possibly change is the fact that I did feel the length of this. I've never noticed the runtime of JFK before, and I think this is my first time watching the director's cut, and this is the first time where I was like, a little bit long. Like, I never felt that way about the movie before. And I know it's easy to say, oh, well, 17 minutes in terms of a 3-hour film. It's like 17 minutes is an eternity on film. There is a reason
17 minutes
people,
is all of Donald Sutherland's speech.
Right. But
one pod race.
There's a reason that people cut things down. You know, like it's just the truth. And
well, in this length, it's like you're already in the triple hour. So it's like at that point, 17 minutes is like chicken feed on the end, you know, in a way.
I don't know. I mean, because it's like The Godfather. The first Godfather, you know, clocks in around 3 hours, but it feels just like the right amount of time. And I think the second Godfather is a little over 3 hours. It's like, there's not really a second I would cut from that film. Is there something I would cut from this? Honestly, I don't know where I would. Like I'd have to sit down and rewatch the thing and be like, I guess maybe that, but like you can't cut shots out. This is a thing where you're going to have to, because of the way it's put together, you're going to have to take like sections out or recompose the thing. And it's like, that's
and you're
a
going to have
daunting
to do
idea.
that not necessarily in the edit. You're going to have to do that where you're like, okay, we can't show this whole portion of the assassination. So we have to have someone say the information in less time than we could show it.
Right.
But they kind of found that they're showing it as they're saying it. So it's kind of the same amount of time. So yeah, it's a really good point. It's so interwoven. I don't know where you could cut. You can't cleanly cut. You'd have to pick at it all over.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that's probably why I have and again, this is time dilation sort of thing. Like it's been a while since I watched the original cut. And so it's like, I don't know if it's my mind playing tricks on me, but I swear there are moments where like even just the look of a shot was different. Like it just looked different from the texture of the rest of the film. And I was like, I feel like this has been rearranged in some way. But I'm probably imagining that. I would imagine that I know that Stone has regretted the final cut of The Doors. And I agree with him on that because there's a scene at the end that he cuts out that I think really needs to stay in that film. With this, I would love to sit down with him and say, so which cut do you really honestly think people should watch of this film? I'd love to get his read on that.
All right. Well, even though I said it was going to be 3 hours in the beginning, I lied. This is the podcaster's cut of our podcast where we try to keep it to around an hour. We honor your time as you honor ours as we watch these movies for you. So we're going to circle third and have our courtroom scene as we debate the ratings for this. So let's start with you, John, with any final thoughts, any extra tidbits, maybe suggestions.
This is where I will throw out something that had never really occurred to me in all of the history of it. Like I love everything around the JFK conspiracy theories. I mean, boy, it would be so easy to unseal all of those files, jerks, so that we could all look at them ourselves, but that's okay. Just keep kicking that can down the road.
Something gets unsealed in 29, which is not that far away.
They can keep extending those things. Don't worry. And they will.
And the previous administration also unleashed some stuff, but nothing juicy.
Yeah. Just little tidbits here and there to give us hope. But the one thing that hit me, and it's it was kind of odd, but I actually talked about it with my wife, was there's a famous shot, and it's a documentary shot that is in this film. It's a still photo, but it's actual history. It's not staged for the film. And it's of LBJ taking the oath of office on Air Force One with his hand on the Bible. And it never really hit me until this watching of the film. And maybe I need to give more credit to Stone for the way he portrays things or the way he got my head in that space or something like that. But I think maybe for the first time, if not in my life, then in a while, I saw Jackie Kennedy standing next to LBJ, and I got angry because I thought to myself, why did you make that poor woman with what she just went through stand next to that guy while he's being couldn't you just let her not have to take that picture? Right?
Why does she need to be there?
Exactly. The magnitude of what happened hit me in that moment when I saw that shot because of what Stone had constructed. It's a testament to the film, I think, in that this is something that's so easy to be emotionally detached from, especially this many years later. But then when I saw that photograph in the context of this film, I got that anger, that upset, that sorrow about everything.
All right. So what rating did you give it, John? And as always, who in the history of this historic event was Lance Reddick?
Lance Reddick would be, as much as I love him, I would put him in as X because I think he could play that role really, really well. But, and we always give the qualifier, I would never cut Donald Sutherland from this film. Never in a million years. But, if we're wish casting and Sutherland's not available, I'm going with Reddick. And it's 5 stars. I consider this absolutely mesmerizing, spellbinding. Love it. It's a little too long. There are a couple things that don't work, but on the whole, this is the movie that Oliver Stone rightly should always be remembered for. This is his masterpiece. This is, well, Any Given Sunday gives it a run for its money, but like, this is an incredible film from so many different perspectives, and it's so much fun to watch. And even if you think it's all bunk, it's so much fun to talk about all the conspiracy theories that he's throwing out there. It's so much fun to talk about this movie. So 5 stars, solid entertainment, top to bottom.
It does sound fun. Let's talk about it. Wait, we just did.
There you go.
So Tristan, on your first rewatch, any final thoughts on this historical document? Just like Gilligan's Island. But final thoughts and of course your Lance Reddick pick.
I don't think I have too many final thoughts on it. I feel like I kind of expressed how I feel. It's too long. I feel like there's a lot of things that Darren, I kind of feel what you felt, where I'm just kind of like, there's so many scenes where I just start to glaze over, and I am not as in tune with conspiracy theories as John is in the history of it. I mean, I've seen the X-Files. I know what's going on. But
there's no man with red string on a wall. I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, it was hard for me to really grab hold of it and really latch on and to say like, no, keep going. This is good. Because it was with Donald Sutherland, I perked up and I was like, wow, that's amazing. And then when it was over, I was like, okay, and we're back to normal. It almost felt like a different movie to me during those 16 minutes. And I, as I was watching Garrison's final speech in the courtroom, I got so distracted because I was like, oh my gosh, there's no way this is a real closing argument, because he would have gotten the gavel 15 times during this speech, because it's like, are we prosecuting the US government, or are we prosecuting Shaw? Pick a lane. Because 90% of it, 99% of his speech had nothing to do with Shaw. And they barely attempted to cover that up, as Stone barely attempted to cover that up or lampshade it. And they laid it on really thick towards the end, to the point where Kevin Costner even looked at the camera, and I was like, do I like that? Do I not? I mean, they already beat you over the head with it. Then I'm like, no, I like it. And so I was happy that happened, because I was like, with fourth wall breaks, I can kind of go either way, but I generally do like it. And I did like that, but they really tested you with that. Man, I like, the editing is so superb. The music is great. The cinematography. I'm going to give it, I want to give it 3 stars, but I'm going to give it 3.5. And also, I have the same answer as John when it comes to Lance Reddick. He would freaking kill it as X. And if anyone who's ever watched Fringe knows exactly why, that's such a good answer.
Very Fringe. So some of my final thoughts. Yeah, I mean, I would probably give this one a second viewing. Like, I think that might help me absorb the beginning, because there's so much thrown at you, and I won't have to feel like I'm trying to learn it all at once, because it's just a lot. I mean, not that I can't pause and rewind, but I also liked, the portrayal of Garrison and his like posse. It made me think of like U.S. Marshals, or any kind of movie that's like a newsroom. Like, it's all that vibe of like, okay, who's getting what article, who's going down here. Like, it was that vibe. Obviously, they're district attorneys, but that jived really well. I really liked that group, and I liked that they were the core of a lot of the story. And yeah, it's just. The other thing it kind of made me think of, which I don't know from 91, but it gave me a vibe of, like in Jaws was kind of the first time that a lot of people heard the story of the Indianapolis. I feel like all the pictures and video I've ever seen of the JFK assassination have not been like that shot. So I kind of wonder, was this movie like the first time the large populace saw that fully realized shot in the head of JFK. It might have been. I don't have a ton of knowledge on this, but maybe Gen X saw a lot of that. I'm not sure, but but yeah. So I'm going to give this movie 3 stars. It crawled its way up from 2 as I was starting this conversation. I mean, Donald Sutherland's bit is just so gold, and it does pick up as it gets there. But I mean, I mentioned again, I could jump in the midpoint of this movie and feel like I didn't need the first part. Like, it's definitely beneficial and it definitely is amazingly acted, but I could handle a Cliff Notes version of this and be okay. But I'm going to make Lance Reddick. I want to see him as Bill. I want to see him as the turncoat, see him as the one that, Garrison has no doubt is true to him, but is not. So I think that would be an interesting, I mean, not that, like we've always said, not that Minnie Rooker's not amazing in it, but I would have liked to seen that. So a 3, a 3.5, and a 5 for JFK. We're sticking with kind of a bit of a theme with biopics and specific positions in the U.S. government. So thanks again for joining us here on Houselights. Next week, we're going to be jumping to 1995's Nixon here on Houselights.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.